My name is Emily. I'm a night shift nurse at a small countryside hospital, the kind of place no one thinks about until they absolutely have to. There are no sirens screaming through the night, no gurneys crashing through emergency room doors, just dim yellow lights, creaking floor tiles, and the quiet hum of machines keeping people barely tethered to life. The building itself is ancient, built sometime in the 1960s. It has that scent, sterile but aged, the kind of smell that seeps into your scrubs and clings to your skin long after you've gone home. Working nights here means being surrounded by silence thick enough to choke you. But one thing always broke that silence, even when it shouldn't have. Room 237. That room had been locked and unused for 5 years, ever since the death of a patient under strange, unspoken circumstances. No one ever talked about what happened, and I had long since stopped asking. There was a small tarnished brass sign on the door, "Authorized personnel only." No name tag, no scheduled cleanings, nothing. Just an empty, dead door on the 3rd floor. And yet, strange things kept happening. When I walked the halls alone at night, the motion sensor outside 237 would sometimes flicker on, just for a second. Once I thought I heard something inside, like the whisper of sheets being moved. Another time, a soft tapping, like fingers brushing against the glass window on the door. I told myself it was the pipes, or the old ventilation system, or maybe my mind, restless from too many 3 a.m. coffees and not enough sleep. But then came the night everything changed. It was a Thursday, a slow one. I was halfway through my shift, going through patient charts behind the nurse's station when it happened. The nurse call bell rang. Loud, sharp, echoing through the quiet like a scream in a cathedral. My heart jumped. I looked at the console to see which room it came from. Room 237. For a long second, I just stared at the glowing red dot on the screen. I checked again, still flashing. I stood up, slowly, as if moving too quickly might shatter the moment into something worse. My legs felt heavy. My fingers trembled slightly as I reached for the emergency keyring hanging by the wall. There was no reason that button should have gone off. That room had been sealed since before I was even hired. As I stepped into the hallway, the air felt different, heavier somehow. The kind of stillness that presses against your skin, urging you to turn around. I walked past dim-lit rooms, past sleeping patients, past the last flickering light at the end of the corridor, until I stood in front of it. Room 237. The motion sensor above the door blinked on as I approached, casting a pale light over the door. What made my blood go cold wasn't just that the light turned on. It was that the door was already open. Just a crack, like it had been waiting for me. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed to leave it alone, to go back, tell someone, call security. But I didn't. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was fear, the kind that paralyzes, then pushes you forward, because going back feels just as terrifying. I placed my hand on the doorknob. It was cold, much colder than it should have been. I pushed gently. The door creaked open. The room was dim. Dust clung to every surface like frost. There was no bed, no signs of life, just old equipment pushed to the corners, forgotten, except for one thing. The heart monitor. It was turned on. Beep, beep, beep. A steady rhythm flashed across the screen. the unmistakable peaks and valleys of a beating heart. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't a recording, it was live. Someone or something in this room was alive. I stepped in, half expecting the door to slam shut behind me. It didn't, but the air grew colder, thicker. My breath came out in a fog, and then a voice.
I'm not discharged yet. I froze. It didn't sound angry. It didn't even sound threatening, but it sounded real. I looked around the room, but there was no one there. The monitor continued to beep, calm and steady, but no wires were attached to it, no patient, just that sound, that proof of a heartbeat in an empty room. And somewhere deep inside me, something stirred. A terrible, impossible question. Whose heartbeat was I hearing? I stood motionless, my eyes locked on the heart monitor. That soft beeping, it felt louder than my own pulse, like it echoed through my bones. I glanced at the screen again, hoping it had glitched or was replaying a recording. But no, the heartbeat was steady, present, alive. And yet, the room was undeniably empty. Still, I wasn't alone. I'm not discharged yet. The whisper replayed in my mind. I couldn't place where it had come from. It hadn't come from the intercom or from behind me. It had come from everywhere and nowhere, like it had been spoken inside the room's air itself. I backed out slowly, my shoes barely making a sound on the tile. The hallway was silent when I stepped out. That was somehow worse than if someone had been waiting. I locked the door. And then I made the mistake of telling someone. It was during the morning handover. I sat across from Sarah, one of the day nurses. Her shift had just started, and I must have looked as pale as a ghost because she raised an eyebrow before I even opened my mouth. "I think the call system's bugging," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Room 237 went off last night. The monitor inside was..." "Still running," she finished, her expression suddenly unreadable. "You went in?" I nodded. She exhaled, leaning back. "You shouldn't have." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer right away, just looked around, made sure no one was too close. Then she whispered, "You're not the first to hear something from that room." Goosebumps rippled across my arms. "I thought it was just an old rumor," she continued. "But about a year before you came, a new hire quit after one shift. She heard something in 237 too. Said the monitor started beeping, said a voice called her by name." I blinked. "By name?" Sarah nodded. "Cried in the break room. Said it felt like the room knew her." No one believed her. Admin said the equipment was unplugged years ago. I swallowed hard. What happened to the patient? There was a long pause. "I don't know. The files were sealed. Admin claimed it was an error, but everyone here just avoids it." Her tone changed then, less conspiratorial, more maternal. "Just stay away from it, seriously. Nothing good ever comes from digging into that room." But of course, I couldn't stay away. It began with small things. During my next shift, I walked past the hallway and the motion sensor flicked on. Again. No one there. Then came the call light blinking at random times, only to vanish from the system when someone else looked. Then I checked the security feed. The cameras outside room 237 were supposed to be functioning, but every time the motion sensor went off, the footage was black, just static for 30 seconds, and then normal again. I told myself to ignore it until the second voice came. It was a little past 4 a.m. I was updating patient charts at the desk. The hallway lights were dimmed, no movement, no sound. And then the intercom buzzed. I looked up, red light flashing. Room 237. I froze. My thumb hovered over the receive button. I didn't press it, but the voice came through anyway. Emily. My name. I spun around. Nothing. The call light turned off on its own. I stood up, heart hammering against my ribs. The urge to flee was overwhelming, but some force, maybe instinct, maybe fear, pulled me instead to the archived records room. It was down in the basement. Most employees hated going there, and the lights buzzed like they were trying to die. I searched the patient logs manually. The digital records for room 237 had been scrubbed clean. Nothing from 5 years ago. But the physical files remained, yellowed with age and left in cardboard boxes. I found it. Patient number 237-5A. Last admitted October 12th, 1998. Discharge status? Deceased. But it was the name that made my knees buckle. Emily Granger. My name. My exact name. Date of death? October 12th, 1998. The same day I was born. I sat on the floor of the records room, the old file trembling in my hands. Emily Granger. Born? Unknown. Admitted? October 10th, 1998. Died? October 12th, 1998. But it wasn't just the name. It was the face. Stapled to the inside of the file was a black and white photo, faded and grainy, but unmistakable. A baby wrapped in a hospital blanket, and the name printed below the image confirmed it. Patient name, Emily Granger. I stared at the date of death again. October 12th, 1998. The exact date on my birth certificate. My stomach twisted. I wasn't just scared now. I felt unmoored, like the ground beneath my identity had begun to crack. I photocopied the file and slid the original back into the box. On my break, I called my mom. She picked up, groggy. "Sweetheart, it's 3 a.m. Is everything okay?" "Mom," I whispered, "what hospital was I born in?" There was a pause. "That little clinic in the country. I've told you this. You were premature, so they had to keep you under observation. Why?" I swallowed. "Was it the same hospital where I'm working now?" A longer pause. "Yes," she admitted, "but that's just a coincidence. Honey, you were fine. What's going on?" But I couldn't bring myself to explain. Not yet. When my shift ended, I didn't go home. I sat in my car until the sun rose, staring at the photocopy in my lap. What if the patient hadn't died? What if I was the same child, somehow survived, and the records were just wrong? No, that didn't explain the voice, the heartbeat monitor, the whispers through the intercom. Something was trying to contact me. Not harm me, not yet, but to be acknowledged. something that shared my name, and maybe my soul. I returned that night, determined to face room 237 again. The hallway was quiet when I approached. I passed the other nurses with practiced calm, but inside, I was spiraling.
I stood before the door. I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't requested backup. This felt like something I had to do alone, not just for myself, but for whatever was trapped behind that door. I unlocked it slowly. The door creaked open. The air inside was different, colder than the hallway, still heavy. The monitor was dark this time, no beeping. But the crib was there now. A metal crib, one I hadn't seen before. It hadn't been there the last time. I stepped forward, heart pounding. Inside the crib was a folded hospital blanket, empty but creased, as if it had recently held something or someone. Then the lights flickered, and I heard it. "Come closer, Emily." It wasn't a whisper this time. It was a child's voice. I froze. My throat tightened, my body trembling uncontrollably. "I'm here," I said softly. "Who are you?" No answer. I reached out, trembling, and touched the edge of the crib. Suddenly, the heart monitor beeped once, just once. The lights flickered again, and the temperature in the room plummeted. I saw my breath cloud in the air. "They thought I was gone," the voice said again, childlike, but filled with something much older. "But they never let me leave." A small drawer in the corner of the room slid open on its own. I walked to it slowly. Inside was a tiny, dust-covered bracelet. Hospital ID tag. My name printed on it. Emily Granger. I picked it up, staring in disbelief. There were 2 matching bracelets in the file I had found earlier. This one made a 3rd. 3 bracelets, 1 name. How could there be 3? That night, I dreamed of a baby lying alone in the room, crying, abandoned. And as I stood outside the glass window in the dream, I saw myself on the other side, staring in. Not as I am now, but younger, maybe 4 or 5 years old. And in the reflection, there was a 3rd version of me standing between us. Not alive, not dead, watching. I woke, drenched in sweat. The dream still clung to my skin. The image of the 3rd Emily, the one who didn't breathe, burned into my mind. She hadn't spoken. She didn't need to. Her silence screamed something ancient, something buried too long. She was still here, and I was beginning to think I only existed because she didn't. I spent the day researching every incident tied to room 237, but the deeper I dug, the more the truth blurred. There was no official report of an infant death on October 12, 1998. The hospital record said I was born healthy. And yet, buried in a sealed archive only accessible by the director, was an outdated incident form with a patient number that matched the file I'd found. No name, just a note. Unexplained cardiac event. Infant declared deceased. Transferred to cold storage. Subject never logged out. never logged out, never released, still here. That night, I returned to room 237. This time, I brought the third bracelet. I held it like a talisman, hoping it would somehow ground me or protect me if whatever was in that room decided to reach through. When I opened the door, the crib was gone, but something else was there. A mirror, old, cracked, hanging on the wall opposite the window. I had never seen it before. The moment I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me, and the lights went out. The monitor flared to life. Beep, beep, beep. A healthy heartbeat, but there was no patient, just me and my reflection. Except my reflection wasn't mirroring me anymore. I stepped forward, my real body trembling, but the girl in the mirror, the other Emily, was calm. She tilted her head. I didn't. She blinked. I didn't. Then she spoke. You took my name. The words didn't come from the air. They echoed from inside my mind, like a memory I had no right to remember. You took my life. No, I whispered. I didn't know. I didn't even know you existed. They gave me a toe tag, she said, voice growing colder, but I was still warm. Her hand lifted inside the glass, my body locked in place, and while I lay in the dark, they took you home. I'm sorry, I said through tears. Please, what do you want from me? To finish what they never did. The heartbeat on the monitor flatlined. Beep! The sound drilled through the darkness. Suddenly, I felt something cold grip my wrist. I turned. No one was there. But the bracelet, the third one, snapped open and dropped to the floor. The lights flickered back on. The room was empty again, except the mirror was broken, shattered inward like something had come through. I left the room shaking, the broken bracelet clutched in my hand. My head throbbed, filled with questions I couldn't escape. Why me? Why now? Was she trying to take her place back? Or was she warning me of something far worse? Because as I passed the nurse's station, one of the on-duty RNs called out casually, "Hey, Emily, we've got a new admit. They're placing them in 237. Can you prep the room?" I froze. Room 237 was never in rotation. It had been off the charts since before I was hired. I turned slowly. Who approved that? She glanced at the chart. Says here it's a direct request. Patient's already en route. Funny thing though. She frowns. The chart's empty. No name, just an ID. E. Granger. They brought the patient in at 2:37 a.m. A coincidence? Or another echo? I stood frozen at the doorway of room 237, watching two orderlies wheel in a gurney. But there was no one on it, just sheets, folded, as if they were preparing for someone who hadn't yet arrived. Or someone who had never left. The monitor was already on, pulsing faintly. Beep, beep, beep. But the wires weren't connected to anything. I stepped inside, against every instinct, every warning echoing in my blood. The moment I crossed the threshold, the temperature dropped. The lights flickered, once, twice, then steadied. The room waited. On the counter beside the bed was a sealed manila envelope labeled Patient E. Granger, Readmission.
My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, a death certificate dated October 12th, 1998. A grainy black and white photo of a newborn girl wrapped in a hospital blanket. A note that read, "Do not resuscitate. Subject declared deceased. Remains unclaimed." And at the bottom, my own name. Not printed, but signed. In my handwriting. Emily Granger. I backed away, my breath ragged. This wasn't a ghost story. This was a loop, a recursion, a life stolen, a soul unclaimed, a room that never discharged its last patient. Suddenly, the lights died. I was submerged in blackness, and then I heard her. That same whisper, close to my ear, colder than bone. We're finally in the same room. The bed creaked. I turned toward it, knowing what I'd see, and still my stomach flipped when I did. A girl sat upright in the bed. My face, my eyes, my voice, but wrong. Empty. You've lived for me long enough. She reached out, not violently, gently, lovingly. Now I'll live for you. I stumbled back, slamming into the mirror, the same one that had cracked inward before. But this time, it didn't break. It shimmered like water. And then it pulled me through. I gasped, blinking in bright fluorescent light. I was standing in the hallway outside room 237. Everything looked normal, quiet, day shift. Had I hallucinated? My scrubs were clean, my ID badge intact. But when I looked down, my name had changed. The badge now read Emma Grant, CNA. Not Emily Granger. Not a nurse. Not me. I rushed to the nurse's station. "Where's Emily Granger?" I asked. The head nurse blinked at me. "Who?" "You know, she works the night shift. She's been here for years." She looked confused. "We don't have anyone by that name on staff. Never have." I stumbled back, heart racing, breath caught in my throat. Then a child's voice echoed down the hallway. I turned. Standing at the far end of the corridor was a little girl, hospital gown, barefoot, holding a baby monitor in her hand. She stared at me with hollow eyes, then lifted the monitor to her mouth and whispered, "I've been discharged, but I left the door open in case you want to come home." Room 237 was sealed again after that night. No records remain. No admission logs. No death certificates. Just an empty room and a heartbeat that never stops.